It's John Bowden from Rock History Music. Our special guest today talks about a subject that we've talked about with a lot of different artists lately. Actually, two things. Luck. Do you believe in luck? How much does luck play in someone being successful? A few weeks ago, I talked to John Cafferty again. He talked about the Eddie and the Cruisers thing, where at one special time, this movie guy walks into this bar where they were just killing it, and he thought, that's the band for Eddie and the Cruisers. He kind of looked at that as luck. The other side of the question that we're going to talk about today is something I first touched on with Bruce Hornsby years ago. And he basically, I'm paraphrasing here, basically said, I wish music was like sports. You get into the right sport, you're going to make money. Our special guest is Steve Postell. You know him from a lot of different artists. We've got a little B-roll coming up. We'll tell you all about him. But most notably, the Immediate Family. This super group of some of the greatest session musicians of all time. I brought up those questions. And in this clip, we also talk about digging deep. There is that thing everyone talks about, oh, I'm getting old, I'm sore over here, sore over there. But there's something, the old cliche is wisdom. We get a lot of that as we get older. We're more discerning. There's a reason why a lot of artists that release albums that we grew up with in the 70s are still releasing great albums, because there's just something about digging deep. Still being able to press that chord when we listen to their music. Steve Postell, a great hang and an amazing guitarist on Rock History Music. From Broadway lights to blues club nights, from Madison Avenue jingles to sharing the stage with legends, Steve Postell has lived a life scored in every key. Steve Postell isn't just a musician, he's a lifer. A singer, songwriter, guitarist, composer, and producer whose fingerprints are on everything from Broadway classics to modern-day rock documentaries. Raised on the East Coast and trained at the Mannes College of Music in New York City, Steve cut his teeth playing with country rock mainstays like Pure Prairie League before leaping onto the Broadway stage with electrifying turns in shows like Evita and The Man of La Mancha. But theater was just one chapter in a musical journey that was anything but scripted. By the late 80s, he co-wrote the score to the off-Broadway rock musical Fallen Angel, starring none other than Corey Glover of Living Colour. His guitar work would soon echo through the airwaves of ESPN's Sports Week, and in the film Jumpin' at the Boneyard, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, and starring Tim Roth and Samuel L. Jackson. In between, he found time to become a sought-after composer for commercials, writing tunes for big league brands like AT&T, Pontiac, and DuPont. And when television came calling, he was a featured guitarist with many different artists. But perhaps the most spiritual chapter came when Steve composed the soul-stirring score for Dying to Know, the critically acclaimed documentary on counterculture icon Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, narrated by Robert Redford. Behind the scenes and on stage, Steve Postell was always in the room where the magic happened. He laid down the guitar on David Crosby's Sky Trails album and co-wrote and played on Crosby's final release for free. His solo project, Walking Through These Blues, is a personal statement that came packed with star power, featuring David Crosby, Becca Bramlett, Ian Matthews, Greg Lees, and more. And let's not forget the Immediate Family, a powerhouse supergroup born out of the studio collaboration with legendary producer and guitarist Danny Korchmar, with Leland Sklar, Waddy Wachtel, and Russ Kunkel on board. This wasn't just a band. It was the Mount Rushmore of session players. Their debut single, Cruel Twist, shot up the blues charts, while their journey was captured on an award-winning documentary by Wrecking Crew director Danny Tedesco. But even as he stood shoulder to shoulder with rock royalty from James Taylor to Jackson Browne, Michael McDonald to John Oates, Steve Postell remained grounded. Tragically, plans for a tour with David Crosby were halted with Crosby's unexpected passing. But Postell just finished a tour featuring that music called Our House, the music of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young by Friends. For Steve Postell, the music has never stopped. It evolved, deepened, and continued to connect because, to him, it's not just about playing songs. It's about living them. He said something that really that hit me so hard. He says, well, you pick the right sport, and if you don't get injured, you're going to be rich, no matter what. It's not that way with music. You can be the best guitar player, and maybe if you don't hang out with the right people, somehow you fall through the cracks. But the people, I mean, the real guys know. Yeah. But and in your world, you probably found that a lot.
I have. It's funny because I'm a very big sports fan, which, musicians, probably a quarter of us are, and the rest of them never don't know anything about sports. But I find it very relaxing, and I've always felt like, wouldn't it be great if art was like sports in the sense that if you were really good, you were on the starting team. If you were really good, you were an all-star, and like it was just more cut and dry. But it never can because it's so subjective and there's a lot of luck. What I like about sports is if you can put that ball in the basket, you're making the team, period. You know, there's no politics involved or who you know or any of that stuff. In our case, there's so many factors other than pure talent. From, I mean, there's the personality factor, which is that people have to want to hang out with you. You know, you have to be, probably number one is to be a good hang. Um, but there's just a lot of reasons why I get, many years ago, I did a tour for Command Music, which made um, Ovation guitars, Alto Takamine guitars, and they were trying to pull out an amp called the KMD. So they put some of us on the road. Once a month, I'd go all over the country to little music stores and do clinics and show this new amp. And one of the things that blew me away was no matter how small the town I was in, there was some guy who was an incredible guitar player. He worked at the gas station. Oh, you got wait till you hear Joe play, and then Joe would come in. I'd be, oh wow, like everywhere I went, there was someone who was pretty like that. It was quite eye-opening. So why do some people get recognition and others don't? It's probably personality, luck, perseverance. Who knows?
I listened to your album, I'm going, is he digging deeper because of his age, or is it all the above? The fact that he has wisdom now and he's learned all these tricks. But this is a brilliant record to me. And
Thank you.
so where does that come from? Where do you get that?
Well, I think there's a few things. One is I did have a lot of time. I didn't have to rush anything. I could really refine all of it in terms of the sounds, the writing, the production. But I think that I think there's that you're either a curious person or you're not. And I know plenty of musicians, not most of my friends and on the level of the top guys, but who like guys who when they were by the time they were 22 they could play 100 cover songs and that's about as good as they ever got and they're satisfied with it and they still have gigs and that's fine. Um, but I'm so curious about the process and I want to feel like the opportunity exists to get better, stay inspired. Some people. I did a show with Bruce Coburn recently. I don't. Well, you must know him. He's Canadian, and
Speaking of great guitarists,
he's just such a brilliant guy. And his what I love is every record is great. He doesn't. It's not like yeah, that was the 20 years old, 20 years ago was great, and now you're kind of repeating yourself. No, he's always digging in, and so that kind of and also since we're not like some artists, we don't have $500 million in the bank. Maybe that spoils you and you don't try as hard. I don't know, but I feel like my ears, uh, not technically my ears, like maybe I have a little loss at 3K, something like that. But I hear more than I've ever heard before. Um, One of the proof of that is when I go back and listen to records I've heard hundreds of times, I hear new things all the time. When I listen to a Hendrix record, I go, "Oh, wow, I never caught that before." Certainly with the beat, all the records I listen to, because I hear more. When I was at the conservatory way back, the classical music, and I was kind of blown away by particularly the conducting students and the orchestrating students who could hear this big score with 20 parts, and they could hear it by looking at the page, let alone, and they could hear it all in their head. And I never got that. I can't look at a orchestral score and hear it, but I can hear a whole in our genre, popular music. I hear everything that's happening at once. I can hear the shaker and the tambourine over here and the bass and the three guitars and the overdub and the string part. I hear all that now. So I think it's just the evolution. Also, as a songwriter, I've analyzed so many songs and I listen in a real critical way. As I still listen for pleasure, but I also listen in a critical way. And so I'm harder on myself in terms of nah, you're taking the easy way out on that line or on that melody or something.
This album, you know what? Listening to your record, man, like you've got everything in there that I love. I mean, it's heavy on melody. I mean, the name threw me a little bit. Not that I don't like the blues. You know, there's no guarantees you get older, you're going to get better. You can fall into your a little pocket. How long did it take for you to do this album? What was the impetus behind it? Did you just have something to say?
Well, I'm always writing all the time. Starting with and my first record was early 90s, right? So I've always had a recording studio from very early on. I figured out way back in the 80s that when I was doing more jingles and corporate kind of uh, videos and so on, scoring, that rather than take all the most of the money and go to a recording studio, if I bought equipment, I could keep the money. So starting early 80s, I would take half of the budgets of these jobs and go to the music stores and buy a 8 track, first a 4 track, then an 8 track, then a 16, So anyway, so always having a studio meant that I could make a record whenever I wanted to. So every time I had 14, 15 songs that I liked, I'd start to make a record. Sometimes I had a record deal, sometimes I didn't. I'd still do it. So it's not that, when I started making this record, I had a bunch of songs that I felt warranted recording. And what happened with this record was I was pretty far into it, maybe 75% into the recording of it, and then COVID hit. And as most people know, it shut down a lot in society. It really shut down musicians. So that for the first time since I was 16, I didn't have a gig, nowhere to play. And for me to put out a record without being able to play behind it, maybe if I was Rolling Stones, you can do it. I got to go play for people to know, oh, it's that guy, and I go see him and he'll buy his record. So I said, let me just keep working on it. It's no rush. And then when COVID started to feel like it was dying down a couple years later, then I got into this new Immediate Family record. And so we did that and put that record out. Then I didn't want to compete with my own band. So it took a long time. The advantage of taking a long time with this record is I got to keep writing. I added some songs. I took some off. I got to keep mixing. I got to keep getting guest artists. So I've never taken this long on a record, but there was no rush. And then Corto Valley Records, who puts out the Immediate Family record, said, "Do you have anything?" I said, I have I actually have a record that's done. And we were like, "Great, let's do it." So that's kind of the history of this particular record.
But on radio, I'm a melody guy, and you're not short on this with every single song on this record.
Oh, that's very nice you say. Well, again, I had time to really pick and choose. Um, but I look, I'm in the age group where what we came up on, it was all words and melody. It's the initial inspiration was the Beatles for many of us, myself included. I actually saw the Ed Sullivan Show. My parents let me stay up, and that was all melody. There isn't a Beatles song that's just sort of you know random chanting. It's melody. And then all the guys that I loved, even the early Dylan, which people, oh, he can't sing, he's just kind of talking. It's all melody, and all the stuff I loved, and the Motown stuff, melody, 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 and then the wordsmiths happened, and from Joni Mitchell, and and of course Bob and Eric Anderson, who I ended up playing with, and Leonard Cohen and Lou Reed. Then it was like, oh, poetry and melody. So it's just what inspired me, still does. Um, um, there's room for everything, and if you like to go watch a DJ make sounds, and fine. I don't doesn't do anything for me, but I support it.
Do you still have a motorcycle? I was curious.
Oh no, no, no. I had a bad accident in 1987. Couldn't walk for 6 months, and I was like, that's that.
Oh, walking through these blues, Ian Matthews. I just talked to Ian a little while ago. What did it start with you two guys?
We were both at the International Folk Alliance uh, 12 years ago, something like that. And I was playing with Dan Navarro, who's a wonderful troubadour. Wrote "We Belong" was his claim to fame many years ago, but has played ever since. Was in a group called Lone and Navarro for a lot of years. So Dan and I were doing this radio show because they at Folk Alliance, which is this big music conference that happens once a year. They have side things going on. So there was a radio show that was doing interviews and having people play. So we shared the hour with Ian Matthews, and we went first. And Ian was listening. He goes, "Hey man, would you like to play on our thing too?" So so I played just by ear there. He just liked the way I played. Anyway, so we developed a real friendship, and we've done about 4 tours together in the States, and we just played a show 2 weeks ago at McCabe's here in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
But
Uh,
a lot of history. Ian has made 40 solo records.
Talking about walking through these blues.
That was an interesting song that came out of, well, some people always write the same way. Like Joni Mitchell says she always write the words and then she writes the music. And some people always write the music. And I try to, and when I teach songwriting workshops, I say there's probably about 6 different lanes you can start a song from. The drum groove or a melody or an idea or a title and so on and so forth, or a guitar riff. So, like I'm sure a lot of the Stone songs and Zeppelin songs started with a guitar riff. I was teaching a lesson, and my student brought in a John Mayer song. And I've told this story now a few times, and I keep saying, oh, right, I got to remember what song that was, because I don't remember. But my student couldn't figure out the right hand guitar pattern. It was kind of tricky. And John Mayer, aside from being a great songwriter, singer, is a fantastic guitar player. So I figured it out and taught it to my student. Very cool pattern. And after my student left, I kept playing it, and then I changed it from a major chord to a minor chord. And so I just had this vibe that I stole from John Mayer, and which I never would have even heard or known if someone hadn't asked me to teach it to him. And then the song was born out of playing that feel. And that happens. And then the idea is, it's a strange thing writing songs. Like an idea pops in your head, a melody pops in your head, a lyric, then all of a sudden you have a title. It's a little bit of a magical process.
In the early 2000s, I was interviewing Jerry Beckley. He was coming to town with America, and John Mayer was just starting to get big, and I'm a drummer. I'm not a guitarist. This is everyone's saying John's such a great guitarist, and Jerry just said, he says he is, and start asking every musician, every guitarist you talk to. He says just the type of he's just pigeonholed in this type of music. Doesn't mean he can't. Glenn Campbell is a guitarist, or Vince Gill.
It's good. Oh,
People
yeah.
sometimes forget, because they're overshadowed by style, by genres in general, or by the person, or they forget, right?
Well, we get pigeonholed too. It's you're generally like, well, he's a songwriter. Oh, wait, he's also a guitar. So some of us, Vince Gill's a great example. I'm a songwriter first, probably, but I am a guitarist, and it's a very important part of who I am and what I do. I remember when I got to LA at first, when I first got here, I was playing a lot of guitar for people, And I remember one time it was actually with Dan Navarro. There was a festival, and I did my own set. And the woman who ran the festival said, "I don't get it. I thought you were a guitarist, but you write all these great songs." So I like doing multiple tasks and learning them. I'm very curious about the process. So I engineer, I produce, I write. You know, as long as it's music, I'm probably going to be happy doing it.
Are you wired that way? When did that start?
Well, it was natural for me. It wasn't like I read that someone did that. I like from the very beginning of this whole process, I've just had this vast curiosity about everything music. And my father bought me a what younger people won't know. It's called a sound on sound reel to reel tape recorder. It was the first tape recorder that you could record a second track on essentially. So I had that when I was 15. So it was a two-track reel to reel, but then you could overdub one time on it. Um, so so I was fascinated by being able to do that. I was fascinated with the guitar, and then when I got an electric guitar and listened to Hendrix and the Allman Brothers, and you can solo, and B.B. King, and so everything that came my way. Then I did Broadway shows, and I was, you can play like this, and then I got asked to score a movie, and I got asked to score, there's writing jingles, and I never differentiated it that much. Like, now I'm doing it. It's like, it's all music. I get to do all these now, and now with this technology that we have, um, I'm enamored by it. I'm always getting new plugins, and oh wow, this new plugin, and it does this and does that, and I can get these sounds, and so it wasn't like a conscious decision. And when it comes to writing songs, so if what sort of moved me to do these take these different avenues was if I got stuck. So if I'm on the guitar, I get stuck, I'll go play the piano. Or if I get stuck, let me program a drum groove, see if that does something to me. So it was just more of a survival of the song instinct. Like, what do I do to make this one happen?
Remember, if you want to support the channel, there's PayPal links on the very top of every one of our videos. You can join our Patreon where there's hundreds of clips that have not been on YouTube yet. You'll get early access for $6 and change. Or you could pick up, and by the way, it's our biggest seller, a Rock History Music cap, a baseball cap. They sell like crazy. Second to that is our t-shirts. And a lot of folks like the Rock History Music jackets. We have a swag store. Check it out. Again, all the links are in the description. When you subscribe, make sure you click the bell notification so you don't miss anything. Like our videos, comment on them, and share them on social media. I'm John Bowden. Thanks always for watching. Take care of yourself.